Hey, I decided that here on the channel, there are 3 episodes I was really in the mood to break down and talk about this month. All of them are the remaining episodes of Scooby-Doo Where Are You Season 2 that I have yet to touch on. As such, they might as well all go together as we get into what makes them spooky, absurd, bizarre, or even downright controversial, as we'll see in the episode today. I asked supporters on Patreon to vote on which one of these everyone wanted to see first, and our subject this time got the most votes by a pretty big margin, so clearly there's something to talk about here. And I've been considering how to go about this one for a while, as it's not really a scariest villains episode as we often do, and there's a lot to be sensitive about. As such, I'm simply going to throw myself in and hope it floats. Evil woke warning up front. This 1970s TV episode has some of the most egregious racial insensitivity of the entire original run of the series, in this case of the Asian variety. And I do mean just Asian in general, but mostly Chinese, and we're not going to just ignore it and call it a day. The episode also draws a lot from the 1932 film The Mask of Fu Manchu, if you want to check that out for reference and haven't yet. The Scooby-Doo show would later have another Chinese-themed episode in Scooby's Chinese fortune cookie caper, which at least was less shocking than this one. I already covered that episode last year if you want to check that out. It was a soft launch for eventually getting to this one as far as I was concerned in making it. Today, however, we're looking at Season 2, Episode 2, Mystery Mask Mix-Up, originally aired September 19th, 1970. The episode, as an original series mystery, continues to be referenced, the villain being mentioned in the film Monsters Unleashed. And there are several book adaptations like this little Golden Book one. Unsurprisingly, it's not been the focus of or seen inclusion with many standalone or compilation sets, but there was a Cartoon Network VHS themed for it. Either way, Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, creators of the series, would cite this as their favorite episode. So that says something. I think we've set ourselves up enough, let's get into it. The episode opens up in an old temple that's assumed by most to be in San Francisco's Chinatown. I love the bats flying by that have the same sound effect that's in the theme song. Inside, we see these zombie goons awaiting the arrival of our ghostly villain, Zen Tuo, who tells them they must retrieve the mask of Zen Tuo and not return until they do. Interestingly, because of this, even though Zen Tuo is our main villain, with a decent enough design, the henchmen are who we spend most of the episode running from and dealing with. As such, these two, dubbed the Scare Pair typically, also occur more often. Like being villains, they're called the Chinese zombies in the Scooby-Doo Unmasked game. They're effective though. When they lift up their masks in this reveal, it really is kind of chilling. There's at least nothing terribly wrong with the episode yet. Scooby by this time is already borrowing a lot of inspiration from horror films and similar works from the 1930s and 40s in episodes. These aesthetics are just borrowing from the Mask of Fu Manchu, as mentioned earlier this time, down to focusing on the mask as if it wasn't obvious enough. That film itself is not without issue. Fu Manchu himself is even played by none other than Boris Karloff, decidedly not a Chinese actor. When the film was re-released 2 years after this Scooby episode, the Japanese American Citizens League even requested it be taken out of circulation due to the negative portrayal of Asian people. The exotic foreign villain trope is repeated in the Snow Ghost episode from the same season that we looked at recently, and was heavily ingrained in pop culture still by this time, so it really just is what it is. But the response to that film resurfacing 2 years later shows the changing times in motion. In a peppier part of Chinatown with fireworks and celebration, and a dragon making its way by, the gang are enjoying the sights of the Chinese New Year parade. Shaggy unfortunately has to miss out thanks to Scooby's big fat paws though. Velma suggests they look at some of the curio shops while here, where they come across this ornate mask. While Fred isn't into it, Daphne seems to be drawn to it, instantly agreeing to buy it. She indeed is never beating the rich family allegations with an impulse to spend money like this.
Looks like Daphne wants to scare up a couple of new boyfriends.
Very funny.
They decide to go eat something and leave, while the zombies loom in the shadows, their own creepy masks in full effect. The shop owner is working inside when he's confronted by them asking for the mask, so he sells Daphne out as who he sold it to, making her their new target. As the gang walk to the restaurant, they're confronted by the goons, and I love that everyone hides behind Velma.
She wants the mask. With faces like that, you ought to have 2 masks.
Daphne defends her new purchase, leading to a threat, so Velma sends Scoob to valiantly do his best to defend them. He then gets an idea and runs into this laundry business. No comment beyond the crazy implication that Scooby speaks Chinese. He runs out with a shirt presser and uses it to smoke everything up so they can escape, everyone running off fast. They take the mask to Chinese art dealer Mr. Fong to inspect it, and before we see what he says, there's a worthwhile tangent to have first. Fong here is a sort of rare instance in the show at the time, in that he actually has an appropriate Chinese voice actor, in this case voiced by the legendary Key Luke. You might know him best if you've seen Gremlins. He's Mr. Wing, who sells Gizmo at the start of the film, ironically sort of like the mask is sold in the episode here. If you're a big Hanna-Barbera buff, you might also know him for voicing back in the OG Space Ghost, or Charlie Chan in The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan. He had a career that spanned decades of iconic appearances in film and TV, but sadly, he went uncredited for his performance here, as well as Zen Tuo, the villain we saw earlier. Spoilers if you get the drift. Despite that, I think with how this episode is, we should really highlight this legend being present if nothing else. The other Asian characters in the episode certainly can't say they're as appropriate, sharing voices with Scooby and Fred doing cringy accents, who do obviously by proxy get credit. The only Asian actor being uncredited in this is a choice, and to be a villain, I suppose, is also that. Back to him. Inspecting the mask, he confirms he recognizes it as the mask of Zen Tuo, stolen centuries ago from his crypt. Worse, he adds that the ghost has returned to claim it, and his two goons are his emissaries of the living dead, or zombies. He warns them they're in grave danger as long as they keep the mask. As a kid by this moment, I think I was considering it unfair that something Daphne bought was potentially being taken from her since she paid for it and owns it. But as an adult, if this were really from a grave, white people need to stop with the grave robbing and selling and buying artifacts from those trying to rest in peace as if that's okay. My sympathy with her today on that specifically is not intact.
Well, they're not getting my mask.
You paid for it, mama, but that's not your mask. That is stolen from a grave, if true. Bad karma. Behind them, the zombies are surprisingly able to drive and keep up, so Fred becomes a speedster to try and lose them. And only 6.5 minutes in, we get a chase song that this season loved to add. And for the only car chase of the original series. In this case, the extremely irrelevant, but highly enjoyable I Can Make You Happy.
And I can make you happy if you love me.
For viewers of the channel or just of Scooby, if this sounds heavily familiar, Davy Jones in his guest appearance later performed a cover of the song on the new Scooby-Doo movies, which I talked about a few months ago. Personally, I prefer this original version, just because I grew up with it instead, with the Davy Jones episode not being released on home video for me to watch regularly until 2019. I know many people prefer his though. I love them getting scrambled up in the van as they drive through a hotel. Amazing visuals going on here. What must the guests think? And then driving across rooftops is a lot. Driving off and crashing through a glass ceiling, but then driving out like nothing happened, but yet so much is happening. Give me a minute to process. They start running up that hill Kate Bush style, leading Scoob to fall out the back doors and fly out. He tries to hitch a ride with the next car, but inside are those zombies. So instead he finds this thing and even manages to pass them on it. He crashes and lands on top of them anyway. The gang approach the Fisherman's Wharf, and notice how Scooby is in the van with them while still on the zombie car behind them. Clone confirmed. The van slips on a banana peel and crashes, while the zombies throw Scooby off to join them. And reaching for Shaggy, his arm morphs with his shirt somehow before he pulls him up. As they get their bearings, they realize they've lost Daphne, and look over to see the zombies weren't satisfied with taking the mask from her. They also abducted Daphne, driving off. The 4 remaining members finally free the Mystery Machine, which means it's time to figure out where the zombies took Daphne. On the ground, Velma finds a piece of paper Fred describes as a Chinese laundry ticket, and Velma confirms she can't read it despite being able to read Chinese. So Scooby can speak it, and Velma at minimum can read it. Very interesting. Scooby looks at it in the reflection of her glasses and realizes the writing is backwards, taking it to the van's mirror so the others can read. The paper seems to read The Temple in the Hills, written in one of those stereotypical Asian fonts like chop suey or wonton. Americans might think of this as what Asian or Chinese writing looks like, but it originates here in the West, from the late 19th century. And as one might guess, these fonts have a bit of dark baggage in their stereotypes, with many Asian people associating this type of style with direct racism in their lived experiences. It's a complicated history. You can read this article or others for more without derailing this video entirely or plagiarizing their work. Either way, it's one of many things that might be a little harder to look at now than it was almost 60 years ago. Like I said, this is the Evil Woke video. As for the temple, which was the one we saw at the start, Velma recognizes it and it's rumored to be haunted. Obviously, they head over, and we get to take in this entire entryway that they peek into. They make it to where we saw the ghost earlier, and Fred decides to split up.
But it's like dark and spooky down there.
Where else would ghosts be living?
Yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Little do they know, our 3 creepers are watching from above already, and Zen Tuo is looking very spooky-ooky. As Fred and Velma look around, they find a secret door opening, and looking in, they find poor Daphne tied up as she often is.
I think she's trying to tell us something.
Taking Velma's great advice, they find out from Daphne that it's a trap, but too late as the door closes and locks them in. The boys meanwhile find a curtain they're scared to open, so to be safe, Shaggy covers his eyes and crashes into something inside. Scooby follows and finds his friend's head in a flower pot, and behind them, something more ominous, Zen Tuo himself. Shaggy hops on Scooby, converted into a motorcycle, and rides out. Yet another amazing visual here. He catches up yet, warning them, so Scooby whispers his idea to call his bluff. Shaggy draws a line and dares him to cross, and he keeps on crossing every new one he tries to add, so not helpful. Nor is this door.
Zoinks! The scare pair!
We get a great bit of them running but not moving, revealing the rug they're on getting pulled by those zombies. They finally run off and when revealed again are dressed like this.
Welcome to Shags and Scooby's haunted Chinese restaurant, the place where the ghosts eat the most. You two look like you could stand a little fattening up.
Oh, it almost wouldn't be that bad so far if he didn't talk like that. And it just keeps going as they prepare them a seat. Oh, it just... And then they stick out their tongues and... Oh, Shaggy makes this face. This is, well, let's just say the rest of this episode almost came to pass, and then this moment is shocking it doesn't have one of those disclaimers they stick on Looney Tunes. Thank goodness they run out of the clothes from here. Back to the trio, they attempt to push through the door with no success, leaving their rescue up to the boys. Speaking of, they have another run-in with Zen Tuo, and find themselves not only tied up, but now on top of leftover fireworks that are about to light up. Left alone, they jump down and bounce over to the fuse to put it out, landing their booties on the fire. Unfortunately, that means their booties now instead are on fire. They frantically bounce away, through the door, and land on the statue, opening the secret door that frees their friends. Catching up with everyone safe, Fred and Velma aren't letting the boys go without this mystery being solved. Daphne saw a clue earlier when she was brought in, so she shows them a pigeon coop, Velma confirming these to be carrier pigeons. Love Daphne taking one and rubbing it all over her face. The note Velma's looking at reads November 10, 12:30, Hidden Cove, and she believes they have this about wrapped up. Fred comes up with a trap that breaks my brain to catch Zen Tuo here. He's supposed to step on the gong here. The gang then pulls a string to set off the mouse trap and light the match on this sandpaper, which lights this fuse, and Zen Tuo will zoom down the toy train tracks on the gong that's connected to those firework rockets and into the pigeon coop. Sure, sounds easy enough, and it seems time, because the big guy is headed over, stepping right on his mark. Fred pulls the string, the fuse goes off, the rockets are ablaze, he's zooming down the tracks, all good. Except Scoop isn't done laying the tracks yet. Here comes Big Gruesome, so he starts laying them faster to try and beat him, seeming to just narrowly work. Until Zen Tuo somehow comes back the other way out of control. He turns back around, Scoop ends up on top of him. The two then run into the zombies, a lot of them fly forward and fly out the window.
Well, it's not the way we planned it, but it looks like we've got ourselves a sack full of ghosts.
Also, where'd Daphne's eyes go for a second here? As we might have guessed, the ghost was Mr. Fong, running an international smuggling ring according to this officer. They just couldn't prove it before. Velma assures him the mask will now take care of that. As Daphne explains it, every month one of these masks was sent to him from out of the country, and pressing the jewel, a secret compartment opens with recording tapes that include the names and dates of their shipments. They would write this info down and send it to the rest of their gang using their carrier pigeons. The mask was sent to that shop by mistake where Daphne bought it, while the ghosts were to scare anyone curious away, obviously. The boys are hungry after all this, so Velma offers her single Scooby snack, making them jump for it. Neither of them gets it and are taken down, leaving this mouse to come get his snack instead.
How do you like that? Outfoxed by a mouse!
And that's Mystery Mask Mix-Up. Some interesting moments in this one. To get the obvious out of the way, this episode has a lot of questionable content in terms of Asian representation, but I think the large majority of it could be just written off as being a different time and not all that terrible. No worse than most Scooby representation of other cultures beyond 4 white teenagers in America. But then you get around to 15 minutes into the episode. It's one thing for Fred and Scooby's voice actors to be putting on really bad, cringy accents. That's pretty much just par for the course in the show and in animation at the time. It's another thing for Shaggy to put on the voice himself. Openly it is Shaggy. And then doing this face to seal how bad the moment is. The slanted eyes and teeth are really quite bad. That's really, really quite terrible. If you had room for goodwill toward the rest of the episode, this one bit just sucks it all out. I've seen so many people watch the episode in the modern day not remembering this, and just having the wind knocked out of them by it. I really am shocked that this episode hasn't ended up having one of those disclaimers somewhere. Nothing else in these first 2 seasons that goes into questionable territory is even close to how bad this is. The eyes and teeth combo here date back to at least World War II, used as horrible American propaganda to, as Wikipedia puts it, make Japanese people look stupid to undermine their intelligence. And this eventually turned into the horribly offensive stereotype for most Asian people in America even still by 1970. This stands as a reminder for how bad things were even by this point nearly 6 decades ago, and how far we've come, or sometimes how far we haven't. Like I said, the classic 1930s film that heavily inspired the episode had people speaking out about how insensitive it was just 2 years after this aired. It was of its time, but even the times then were in the middle of evolving as far as what was and wasn't acceptable. And the content of this episode would go without question for the most part still for decades. And just so it's clear, I'm also not advocating for this episode to be taken out of circulation or have any kind of censorship. I just have to be that friend that's too woke, because how can I possibly discuss this episode and ignore those parts? Personally, I'm not Asian. Shocker, I know. So I won't speak any further on the topic. I'll leave this here for other people to talk about somewhere. But we did have to get that out of the way real quick. Now, ignoring that for the rest of the episode, this is a pretty decent story and episode for what it is. Another reason why it's not removed from circulation. At the end of the day, while I don't approve of her doing so, Daphne buying a mask from another culture that was stolen from a grave is something a rich white girl would do. Absolutely, that's what someone like her would do. Thankfully, this may in fact not actually be stolen from a grave in this case, so we may excuse her in this instance technically. After all, they were getting these masks every month, and they clearly open up to serve a different function, and the person who said it was of any value was the person who was running the operation. I think we can exonerate her from this, but still hold her fictionally accountable on the fact that she did in fact do it and is only going free out of circumstance. As part of that though, this operation makes enough logical sense down to the mask ending up in a curio shop where it accidentally gets bought by a tourist and taken off, leading to them getting chased by the monster of the week. The design of the zombies also are quite intimidating with these sort of blank empty faces. There's something extra eerie about how that looks, and the fact that they still can show such simple emotion. I think the extended car chase is also really fun. They get into some incredibly wacky and unbelievable situations that we didn't really see otherwise in this original series to that extent, and being the only car chase also helps it stand out. Fred's trap being one of the most weird and unhinged also stands out. He has some really good ones that we don't always talk about, and this one hurt to think about the complexity, or at least the need for everything to go perfectly. It pays off with the gag of Scooby not being done finishing the track as well. This episode really is fairly iconic for anyone that grew up with the original series, regardless of how you might feel about it being all that good in contrast to other episodes, or if you find the cultural insensitivity of it hard to watch. So it's still worth having a look at with the rest of the bunch. I'm kind of surprised I'm still talking about this one. We've been sitting here together for a minute, this one's going long, so we might as well start wrapping this one up. I think you'll enjoy looking at the other 2 episodes of this season that I haven't yet gotten to when I get those out in the future, so look out for that. Like the video and subscribe so you don't miss it. If you want to support the channel, feel free to go over to Patreon. We have the exclusive Zombie Island and Witches Ghost videos, some other fun little extras. People there got to vote on the order of these next couple of videos even. I'll see you probably very soon with the next one of these. Until then, bye!